Welcome, educators. Whether you are a spreadsheet, dashboard, all things data fanatic like myself, or you break out into a cold sweat just hearing the words data meeting, it's okay. I've got you. My name is Jessica Lane, and I'm your host for this podcast, Data and Education. I'm also the founder of Data Informed Impact, where I work with schools and educators all over to get rid of some of that overwhelm and make things a little bit easier for them to make the best decisions for their students. We'll be talking about all things data culture, data literacy, and data visualization. Let's get started. Welcome to Data and Education, where today we're going to explore a slightly controversial idea, although maybe not for my listeners, but stories. We're exploring the fact that stories are actually more powerful than data, which we all know I am a huge fan of the stories as well. So I'm talking with Danny Bauer, the Chief Ruckus Maker from Better Leaders, Better Schools. He's a 20-year education veteran, a best-selling author, and a host of a top 1% global podcast who believes that the best leaders are the best storytellers. Danny's entire mission is to help school leaders do school differently, and he's here to show us how to stop just presenting the numbers and start telling compelling data stories that actually inspire action and connect with our teams. I am so excited for this conversation, Danny. Welcome to the podcast. So happy to have you.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. It's a pleasure to be here. Appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. So I gave a very brief intro with there's a lot in there. I want you to unpack it a little bit for us and give us a little bit more of your story and how you ended up where you are today.
Yeah, I like to talk about going to high school, right? And I'm waiting for my friend Lindsay, probably my best friend. We grew up together. Our parents knew each other before we were born. And she's a princess. She's the third of three girls, right? And so she's the darling and gets her way with everything, especially with her dad. And so the world just revolves around this person. And I love her so much. So she's my ride to high school. I could walk. It's about a 15-minute walk. It's doable for sure. I could ride my bike there, but I'm in high school. I want to be cool. I want to arrive in a car. So Lindsay's my ride, like I said, best friend. And she says, does 7:45 work? Works perfect because school begins at 8. So there I am waiting for Lindsay to show up. It's 7:45. She's not there. I'm not worried. It's 7:50, 7:55, and I'm like, okay, this is like very Lindsay. So at that point, I start looking outside, the curtains, because maybe peeking outside will make her arrive a little bit
Right.
faster. 8 o'clock, high school is supposed to start. Like, we're officially going to be late. There's no way, unless we have a time travel machine or something, to get there on time. And so at this point, nervously, I walk outside and I'm looking down the street as if that will make her come. It doesn't, right? So I go back inside, just try to, focus on the breath and relax and wait. Well, she arrives, it's 8:15. We're 15 minutes late already, right? Get in the car, we listen to Nine Inch Nails on the way to school. We're there by 8:20. I get to first period chemistry class with Mr. Rogers. I'm in trouble because Lindsay's been my ride all year. I've been late most of the year to Mr. Rogers' first period class. It's probably suspension time. I've had detentions, I've had all this sort of stuff, and we're going to be in trouble. So I have to think fast, Jessica. And so when Mr. Rogers lets me in the door, because he would lock his door, if you were late type of thing, and I said, Mr. Rogers, before you say anything, I'm so sorry. This time was different. I promise. All right, Bauer, let me hear it, Mr. Rogers says. And so I let him know, hey, on the way to school today was different. There was a house and it was on fire, right? But not only was this house on fire, it was filled with a Girl Scout troop, right? Screaming for help
Of course.
for the passerby, right? What would you do in this situation, Mr. Rogers? Would you just walk away, let the girls, burn? This is before cell phones, so we couldn't like call for the fire department or anything like that. And so I let him know. I rushed into the house, grabbed the girls, got them all out to safety. And I don't know if it was that, maybe you could call it a fib. I call it a story. But that very real story I told Mr. Rogers, or if it was the very real do-si-do peanut butter cookie, right? Arguably the best Girl Scout cookie that I handed to Mr. Rogers, no detention, no suspension. And what I learned in that moment is it pays, it literally pays to learn how to tell stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious why you just happened to have a Girl Scout cookie with you. Is that what inspired the story?
Uh, Probably. I mean, I knew I had to lie and figure something out, but the Girl Scouts come by, right? And I don't remember at the time if my sister was a Girl Scout or if somebody just stopped by the house. But we definitely had Thin Mints, Do-si-dos, the Samoas. You know,
Yeah.
an abundance of Girl Scout cookies at the time.
Yeah, well, that would work for me for sure. So I don't blame Mr. Rogers there.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so
gone were the days of mom sending me with a note and a lunch, to school. I'm in high school at this point, so I had to fend for myself, and so I picked a very, nutritious menu.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you learned very early on the power of telling stories, and I'm curious how you kind of transitioned that skill of storytelling into something that um became a leadership skill, essentially.
Sure, sure. Well, I was in the classroom for decades before I moved into administration. I was AP, I was principal. I worked at central office, basically as a avid coordinator, but
Uh-huh.
big role because I was over, I don't know, nearly 30 schools in
Wow.
Chicago public schools. So there was a lot of support there. But even as a teacher, I realized, nouns and verbs and adjectives, adverbs, and diagramming sentences, this kind of stuff. I taught middle school. I also taught high school. It's boring. Why would you
Yeah.
want to learn that?
Yeah.
Nobody would. And so I had to figure out, like, how do I relate to students? How do I grab their attention? And I guess display a radical curiosity about who they are and try to find those sort of like connection points to keep them engaged. And the same stuff that worked in the classroom, the audience was different, but that radical curiosity, the storytelling, that worked with adults as well. And these days, I've been doing my podcast for a decade, believe it or not. We're recording here. It's end of September 2025. I started this September 2nd, 2015, right?
Wow.
So it's changed my life. I've been able to go around the world, literally speaking to groups as small as maybe 10 in Laramie, Wyoming, and as large as 1,000 in Mombasa, Kenya, right? And everything in between. And all I've brought with me is, maybe some pictures behind me and some stories, right? That's what I do. So,
Yeah, cool. Are you still mostly living in Chicago?
no, no, that's where I grew up. And so I suffered the horrible existence of a Bears fan. And man, at least they won last week. But these days I'm in Syracuse, New York. So I've lived in four
Uh,
different states around the US, and I've lived in four different countries: US, Belgium, Netherlands, and Scotland. But
wow.
these days, yeah, Syracuse, New York is HQ.
Yeah, I my teaching experience was in Chicago. Not with
Nice.
Chicago public schools, but with a tiny charter school within the city. So Chicago is my second home. Only
Right on.
second to Cincinnati, and that's only due to time. Otherwise, if we're looking at the scale of food or things to do,
Sure.
probably gonna go Chicago.
All right. Good choice, probably.
Yeah. Okay, so you go around telling these stories. How do you kind of teach this skill? I'm curious because this is something that I've struggled with as someone who I love storytelling. I love hearing stories.
Yeah.
I love telling stories with like my friends and stuff. But when it comes to telling stories related to my work, or maybe I should put it this way, when it comes to telling intentional stories that exist for the purpose of like sharing a very important point, I feel like I struggle with that, so I'd love to hear all of your tips.
Yeah, my storytelling mentor, my Yoda, when it comes to story, his name's Matthew Dix, and he's actually a teacher as well. I was listening to him on a podcast driving to see my sister in Massachusetts, and I probably nearly drove off the road. I didn't even realize I was driving, and that's because I was so
Yeah.
ingrained, right? Just with him in this story. And then he said, I'm an elementary school teacher. And I was in love, right? Like, wow, somebody from education who is so exceptional at storytelling. And people have told me over the years that, I've had a knack for telling stories. And sure, I've been hired to speak and all this kind of stuff, successful podcast. But when I started working with Matt more intentionally in the last year and a half, he showed me some things that were invisible that now, right, you can't not see. And he's given me a framework that actually makes storytelling super easy once you sort of get the building blocks. So some of those things too, obviously a story has a beginning, middle, and end, right? You
Yeah.
would think that that's not rocket science, but it kind of is, you know?
Yeah.
Uh, and if you think about structure and that kind of thing, you know, what a lot of people do is that they report on events. This happened, and then this, and then this, and then this.
Right.
And that also is just as boring as nouns, verbs, adverbs, and
Yes.
adjectives,
Right.
right? It's super boring. Uh, that's probably how you tell stories to friends and family. They probably are really generous and kind and say, "Oh, that was a great story." They're lying to your
They
face.
don't usually lie to me. They're
Okay,
like,
that's
stop.
all right. That's good. That's good. But I think for most people, and you find yourself in a leadership position too, right? Everyone wants to say, "You're amazing," right? It's like
Yes.
ChatGPT, It was like ChatGPT before ChatGPT. Be a leader. Everyone's like, "That's a great idea." Then you leave. What a stupid idea.
Yes.
So,
Exactly.
anyways, I'm going on a tangent there, but you don't want to report. You want to have a beginning, middle, and end. Anywhere that you want to add an and then a then, maybe don't. Think about what would happen in this story if you used a but or a therefore, right? And so those are just like little techniques because, you're bringing people along some kind of path and the and is like linear, right? But if it's a but, there's probably some kind of change, some kind of pivot
Yeah.
that wakes me back up. If I think about it in the terms of YouTube, because I know you've been putting these shows on YouTube and that kind of thing, um, on YouTube, like probably like every 5 to 7 seconds, the scene kind of changes, maybe visually, even if it's not narratively changing. And that's just to keep people engaged, right? So, depending on the setting, you might be afforded a little bit longer to tell a proper story. But you want to be thinking, what's the next scene? What's the next scene? So, that sort of gives another principle of storytelling: location, location, location. Like that's where the scenes are happening. And you want to start each scene with location and action, right? And if it's anything other than that, cut it. Just cut it. Something I've learned telling a lot of stories over the years, I try to pack too many stories into one. And feedback I
Mm.
get all the time from AI and real live people, that is multiple stories, right? Told a story about a crazy Airbnb sort of experience, right? Because I was speaking at the Moth, it's a competitive storytelling event, and the theme was hospitality. So I told a story of basically the worst hospitality I ever experienced. Okay. And essentially, like the punchline, so to speak, is we're in Casablanca, Morocco, right? I'm upstairs. I'm in the kitchen of an Airbnb we've rented. My wife's downstairs preparing for a work event in the shower. She's also Zimbabwean. She's black, so black folks have different hair than you and I probably, and so it just it takes different and a lot more right. Whatever. Just it takes a lot more effort. Okay. So,
Yeah.
anyways, that I just wanted to give you that context. But I'm in the kitchen. I'm making us coffee. Miriam is showering, and at the same moment, I hear her scream, and there's a knock at the door. So I open the door, and a man starts shouting at me in Arabic, words I don't understand, right? And he hands me a letter in Arabic because I'm in Morocco, something I can't read. He looks really mad. I'm wondering what's going to happen next. And just then he turns around, disappears down the stairwell. I run down the stairs after closing the door because my wife had screamed, and I'm like, what's going on? The water's been cut off. oh no, she has a work thing in like 5, 10 minutes. What are we gonna do, right? I use Google Translate to look at the letter, and it basically says, "You're a jerk. You didn't pay your water bill." And I'm thinking, I'm not the jerk, the Airbnb host. When
That
I
me.
rented it, I thought it came with doors that lock, water that works, all sorts of stuff. Maybe some Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi works, water doesn't work. We messaged the host, and she's just like, "Hey, that's just the way things are in Africa. We're experiencing rolling droughts, right? And so like we just shut the water off throughout the city. BS, because we translated the letter. So,
Right.
anyways, yeah, got her water, all this kind of stuff, and she got washed up and ended up going to her work event. But the night before, we kind of gambled in terms of the restaurant, right? And it was delicious. We wanted to get tagine one last time. It's chicken that's cooked in a clay pot, but I think I kind of gambled, right? It wasn't the cleanest place that we've ever eaten. And sometimes if you've traveled the world, you eat in some places that are a little bit, oh, I don't know about that. And so I'm like not feeling well. The water's not
Oh
working. We're in
no.
trouble. And so I decide, hey, we got to get a refund for this Airbnb, go, to a hotel or something like that. We end up in, the Marriott, right? Working air conditioning, working water, all this kind of stuff. But the thing that I learned, and it was over tacos and burgers instead of tagine and traditional Moroccan food, and I'm sitting there with my wife, and I realized this moment really sucked, right? It was really pretty terrible. But creating moments with people you love, there's nothing better than that. So even though if I knew going into that experience, the water would be cut off, I'd be sick, all this kind of stuff, I still would have done it, right? Or I'm thankful that I did because I made this memory with Miriam and, she's my favorite person. That's my wife, right? Yeah. And so that's the moral of the story, right?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I love it. So and that's the same story that you told in the competition,
It was a little bit longer. It was like a 6 minute-ish
right?
story, right? And it was a lot tighter. I didn't think I would tell it for this one. So I think I did a very average job telling the story. You could tell me if you thought it was any good or any bad. But some of the things, right? Like there were some scenes. I'm in the kitchen. I'm down with my wife. I don't think I explained very well, but I ran to go get the water from a convenience store, came back. There's a whole sort of bit I do about like you know, gambling and waddling on my way to the hotel, right?
Yes.
Something I didn't do is and this is a storytelling method, so sorry I didn't model it, but I'm glad I'm unpacking it for you. Matt loves to talk about stakes and backpacks, and it's like sort of loading up your audience for just feeling the emotion and the drama, right? So usually, like when I perform that story, I talk about how, if we're gonna travel from America to Morocco, Miriam and I are the kind of people that we love to do it the authentic way, right? And so there's no way that we're going to go to KFC, although it's everywhere around the world, or
Right.
McDonald's. We're not going to, stay at the Marriott. And I forget the third thing that I would say, but I hint that there's no way I'll ever go to the Marriott, right? I put that
Yeah.
seed in somebody's head. And then after I'm talking about walking and I finally make it, and this hotel is clean, it has air conditioning and it has water. I'm so thankful to be staying at the Marriott. And when I reveal it there, like 5 minutes later, 4 minutes later, that always gets a really, big laugh.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And ultimately, what makes a story is a 5 second moment, right? And so for me, the 5 second moment is sitting with my wife, realizing this experience was really hard. We wouldn't have picked it knowing it would be really hard, but yet I'm thankful because life's about making memories, right? Instead of
Yeah.
collecting a bunch of stuff. This is my point of view, and doing it with people you love, right? So that's the 5 second sort of like insight, right, that I had,
Yeah.
and what makes the story kind of okay.
I love it. I think it's a great story. And I think there's
Thank
a
you.
lot in there that's like relatable too, like people when you hit that 5 seconds, it's like oh, I can think through some of the memories that I have that have been disastrous, but I'm glad I had them because of the people that I was with. Like I think that
Yeah.
relatability too, just like the feelings that come from that are awesome. So I'm curious how you turn this into like a leadership skill. How does this become beneficial for school leaders specifically?
Because I think, unless you're sort of like an engineer, come from sort of a STEM background, and you think numbers are really great, like overall, numbers are kind of like not as interesting, maybe even boring or not as motivating, right? So I think data might inform you, but stories move people because it
Yeah.
touches here, the heart, right? That's what Matt loves my humor at times, and he loves when I'm able, he says, you make people feel something, right? And so
Mm,
if you could get people to feel something through your story in relation to the data, your student performance, attendance, discipline, whatever, now they're going to be thinking, right? They're going to relate. I think that was a word you used, Jessica.
mhm.
And if you get them there, now their mind is open to potentially changing. The storytelling, like literally, if you ever have a group of people and say, hey, can I tell you a story? Watch their body language. A lot of people will lean in. They'll be like, yeah, I
I
am,
already noticed that I'm leaning in, so
yeah,
I
I am
agree.
DNA programmed, right, for thousands of years to
Yeah.
sit around a fire and somebody says, let me tell you a story. And I'm
Yeah.
ready, right? And hopefully it's a good one. So it gives hints about the human experience too, you know? And so in terms of leadership as well, uh, I think it's a mistake to keep apart or separate too much the public and the private, right? Some school leaders, that's who I usually work with, think they need to like hide their personal life or only talk about work, right? And they probably just don't want to get burned, I think.
Hmm.
Maybe they don't want to get hurt. Maybe they've just gotten poor advice from other folks, that come before them.
Right.
Um, But when you tell stories that are real, right? People connect to you and they're going to want to they're going to want you to be successful,
Yeah.
assuming that you're doing other things like showing interest and caring about your staff and, everything else. And so I think telling a story about that 5-second moment, that insight, that change, story about your kids, what you're learning. And so a hint, for your audience, I was working with an ed tech company and they help use AI to really speed up sort of accommodations. Central office might have great training, great people leading, great people implementing, in the classrooms too. But time in teaching can just be a challenge, it.
Yep.
And even though on paper, all the IEPs and accommodations look perfect, right? In reality, maybe they're not actually lived out all the time. And so, yeah, when I was working with this guy who started this company, we talked about basically a time where his son was getting like just super frustrated, super frustrated. They were working in their garage, and I don't know, it's like making stuff, right? Like dad and
Mhm.
son type of thing. And he realized he was getting upset and then he had to walk away and his son was like finally able to sort of figure it out. But we used that story actually for him to sort of like pitch the company a bit because essentially the tool helps students figure it out, right?
Yeah.
And if you could have confidence at scale that your IEPs are written well, and a teacher with a click of a button could take their lesson plan and then have it adapted, right, to all the
Hmm.
kids based on, their personal IEPs or accommodations, like wouldn't that make you feel great, in terms of confidence and that they could figure it out and et cetera, et cetera. But many founders or leaders, they're going to want to just like talk about their company, or in
Yeah.
your context, let's talk about data and why we need to change as a school. I don't know. I mean, maybe if I want to, like if I
Yeah.
care a lot, but like make me feel something, and now I
Yeah.
want to
Right.
change. So hopefully that's making sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting is that I just last week announced that I am actually taking a position as a director for a new ed tech startup. So,
Oh,
um,
cool.
yeah, and over so it's with the founder essentially is someone I've worked with for the past couple of years, just kind of on little side projects, um and she tells the story about how when her son was diagnosed with autism, how she began to track the little progress monitoring aspects of the things that they were trying with him, I'm telling you, I'm doing a very poor version of her story. Speaking of storytelling, but she tells it, and it's such an impactful story. And I think that's why she's gotten as far, not one of the many reasons why she's gotten as
Mm,
far as she has, is because she has that story and people can connect to it. Whether it's as a parent or as a teacher in the classroom, like having those moments where you're just like it feels like the student is not understanding it, but then if you break it down into those tiny steps, they're just not getting that big step all at once, they're getting the tiny steps in between.
mm,
And so feeling that story and kind of feeling how relatable it is as a teacher, I think has been super beneficial in us kind of allowing people to understand why we exist. So
yeah. Well,
that's
let me paint a
interesting.
pic. It is interesting. You're right.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off. I
I
just wanted to paint a picture, for you and those watching or listening, right? Like the traditional principal is going to stand up in front of his or her staff. They're going to have some presentation. It's going to have way too many words on slides, right? It's going to have, hard to read, probably graphs and stuff like that.
Yep.
And it's like, maybe depending on the situation, it was given to you by the central office too, right? So you're just like,
Yeah.
what am I going to do with this? Fill in the blank. I'll use the word garbage.
Yep.
But I
Exactly.
might pick a more colorful word if it were me. Um, what are you going to do with that, right? Like, it's true. All right, data's down. Like, okay, kids aren't reading at the right level, whatever. And so think like, if you're in that position and you have some autonomy and you're also open to trying something new, right? What is the theme, the meaning, or the message that you want to give to your sort of staff, right? Based on the data. And maybe there's like, hey, we got feedback. Some of the feedback's good, some of it stings a bit. So what are we going to do about it, right? So the traditional principle, too many words on slides, the data, and it's like, okay, that's the data. So now we have to change, right? It's because it's your job too, right? Like so that's
Yeah.
why you have to change. But what if you told a story about yourself? Maybe you're a kid, maybe you're an adult, and you got some feedback and it stung, right? And then what did you learn from that? Like, how did you respond, right? What was your insight after getting that feedback? Tell that story. Then after
Yeah.
telling that story, be like, we just got some feedback that stings a bit, right? We did some things well. I want to point them out, X, Y, and Z, but also here's some areas where we need to improve. Can we look at that? And what are we going to do about it, right? And I think just if you primed the staff, the audience, so to speak, with that personal story, right, connected to the theme, meaning, message of the feedback stung, and now I had to do something about it. I think they would be more open to figuring out like what are we going to do about it as a school,
Yeah.
versus oh, the data's here and it stinks and so everybody has to change, right?
Right.
Um,
Check the box,
going
move
to
on.
For sure, going to
Yeah.
PLCs for the first time, tell a story about being on a team that was awesome, right? And learning from mistakes and building on successes, so but that's the thing. It's like what's the theme, the meaning, and the message too, and that should be the through line of the story. Anything that's not about that theme, meaning, and message, cut it out, cut it out. um, in that Morocco story, I used to have a part that's really funny about mistaken identity, right? And so that was a second story, so I had to take it out. It didn't serve the theme, meaning, and message, right? So it was able to be shorter then, and then I was able to tell that story in a different time, and I actually got rated a 9090 and 95 for telling it. So, anyways, yeah, it was good, but didn't fit the first one. So
Right.
you gotta let things go at times.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think too, especially when we're talking about data, it's so important to pull in those stories. I think that when we're looking at just numbers, it's easy to feel very disconnected because like we don't go into education to look at numbers, right? And it feels
Yeah,
kind of like we're like labeling our students with numbers, which feels really junky.
yeah.
Um, and so being able to bring it back to that story, whether it's a personal story that you have, to kind of, bring awareness to the fact that we might feel a little bit defensive about this data, or to talk about the stories of the students. I think all of that is important context that shows that you as a leader are not ignoring. the rest of the context that's out there. We're not saying that the data tells all. The data never tells all.
Right.
It's never going to show the whole story. So bringing in that additional context is, I think, so incredibly important, and such a big reason why I wanted to bring you on the podcast as well.
Cool. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So, as we begin to wrap up, I just want to make sure everyone knows where to find you. I want you to make sure to plug your podcast so that we can get some of our people over there listening to more fantastic stories and anything else that you've got.
Yeah, yeah, if people want to learn more, right? The show's called Better Leaders, Better Schools, and betterleadersbettersschools.com is a website. We have a free newsletter that's at ruckusmakers.news. I think by the time this show airs, I will have already started a storytelling workshop. It's a 6-week experience.
Cool.
So it might be too late for your listeners to potentially join, which is fine. We'll run it again later. Or, right, if you get on the newsletter at ruckusmakers.news, I do know after the 6 weeks are over, then I'll probably package it up. You won't have me live, but if you wanted to go through the content, you could do that, at a very affordable, accessible, way. So that's pretty cool if people are in the story. Like I said, my mentor's Matthew Dix. He taught me so much about story, and he has a great book called Story Worthy. So I didn't write it, but I loved reading it, and you should maybe check that out too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Danny, for coming on this podcast and sharing your stories, and also sharing tips that other people can take and use to share their own stories. So I appreciate that.
My pleasure. Thank you, Jessica.
Well, my friend, did you enjoy it? I'm really hoping the answer is yes. And like every other podcast out there, I'm going to ask you for some big favors. Can you please make sure that you're subscribed? You don't want to miss the next episode, I promise. And then if you could leave a review, that'd be awesome too. If you're on YouTube, by the way, there's this great thing that you can do where you just go to the box underneath the video and type in your thoughts, ideas, wishes, hopes, dreams, and hit comment. And it shows up under the video. It is public, just a warning. But I'd really love for you to do that. Share with me. What did you think about the episode? Or what are your dreams in life? It's okay. You can really leave any kind of comment. And I'll do my best to respond. Above all else, I appreciate you listening, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.